when is a good time to buy real estate? There is no 6.66.
So, this little mark of the beast Bible reference, 6.66.
If you are not ready, it's irrelevant.
Right.
Yeah.
Really?
You'd be surprised how much the season affects what the market does.
Talk to me.
And it's pretty much the same every year. Like, this doesn't change too much year to year. People generally had more money. Again, we weren't out spending as much money on doing things, so people had a good amount of money, which means that they were willing to spend it.
So there's been a lot of talk, a lot of posts, a lot of things saying, don't buy right now. The market's crazy, don't do it. You'll lose everything. Right? And whether that's true or not, we don't know. But what we're going to do in today's episode is just kind of talk about what types of questions you should be asking yourself, what type of research you should be doing, and what are some factors that you should keep in mind when deciding to buy a house, either as your primary residence or as a investment property. All right, does that sound accurate? Is that what we're doing today?
Yeah, everybody wants to know when is a good time to buy real estate. There is no black and white answer to that. But yeah, we're going to talk about like 4 of the biggest factors that we believe you should be considering when you're thinking about coming into the housing market and if it's a good time or not. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Melanated Married Millionaires in the Making show. King, where can I go to stay connected with us?
Y'all can stay tapped into the show at them4show.com. That's them4show.com. And you can follow us on Instagram at them4show.
Now, let's get into the episode.
Right. And, in case you're like, who are these people? Do you even own real estate? So we've had the privilege of owning a condo. We own our primary residence, and we have an investment property outside of the state that we live in. So we are going to talk from experience, but always disclaimer, right? Talk to your own real estate professional, talk to your own CPA or accountant professional before you go out there and you make your own moves. With that being said, welcome to the Melanated Married Millionaires in the Making show. I'm your host, De'Von Travell, creator of Black Wall Street, the board game, and it is my distinct pleasure to have the beautiful, the vibrant, the smiling, the earrings popping Queen Africa Essence herself. Please introduce yourself.
What is going on, everybody? My name is Sinclair, aka the health nerd and the real estate nerd today.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about this, and just to piggyback off of what De'Von said, we are not real estate experts. We are just here to talk about the knowledge, our own personal experience, and to share our opinions. Please go and talk to your real estate agent, talk to your lender before you take action on anything that you hear today. We are not liable for anything that you take action on today. Just want to make sure we cover that before we get into the good stuff.
Strong disclaimer.
Yes.
So Queen, start us off. And of course, if you're listening and you are interested in real estate, go ahead and drop your questions also inside the chat. I'm mainly interested in, are you thinking about getting your first residential property? Like this is your forever home or a starter home for your family? Or are you really looking in the market for an investment property, right? Something that can hopefully cash flow, maybe Airbnb, maybe long-term rental, and you're just looking for some good guidance. Go ahead and drop that inside the comments for me, please.
Yeah. Really what we're going to talk about today is going to be, regardless of what type of property you're going to buy, whether it's going to be your primary residence that you live in or an investment property, everything we're going to talk about can really be applicable to both. So we're going to talk about, again, 4 of the biggest factors to consider: the economic and political climate, interest rates, the season, and then what I believe, my personal opinion, to be the biggest factor. Stay tuned for that one. But let's start off with the economic and political climate. Okay. I think that those are sometimes overlooked when we're talking about it and how it affects the real estate market, but it has a huge. Yeah. What are your thoughts on how economics and politics can affect the real estate market?
I'll just talk from personal experience. Like we just got, and we're not out of COVID per se, but we just got out of like the deepness of COVID, and during that time, during that economic and political time where people were mandated not to go to work, where interest rates dropped to the lowest in, I think, recent history, about that. Right? Yep. Where we were able to refinance something and get below 4% interest rate on a mortgage, which is ridiculous, right? And because that was happening, because interest rates were so low, a lot of people were taking advantage of buying prices or buying real estate, which skyrocketed the price of a lot of things, right? Supply and demand. You have this very finite number of condos, homes, land plots, apartment buildings, and you have all these people that are now trying to buy because for the first time you can get $500,000 at 4% interest. So now instead of something usually being 500,000, it's 550, it's 600, it's 700, and we saw real estate prices skyrocket. So from personal experience, you can see how the economy and politics and how America chooses to deal with the economy will directly influence what the real estate market will look like.
Absolutely. I think the other thing is that there was a lot of money pumped into the economy, right? Printed, literally, right? So many, what were they called? Stimulus checks, right? Put out. So people generally had more money. Again, we weren't out spending as much money on doing things. So people had a good amount of money, which means that they were willing to spend it. So again, you had people out there wanting to buy, but the supply was limited. So that, again, law of economics, supply and demand, like he said, definitely led to the bidding wars that were happening, where asking price was irrelevant at that point because you're competing against 10 other people who want the same property. So you're potentially have $100,000 over asking price to get this property. So absolutely, recessions definitely play a role in the way that the housing market really is dependent on like buyer sentiment and like how wealthy people are or think they are. Yes.
Is a key point.
Yes,
right there.
yes. So if people sense that there is a recession in place or coming and they think that they have less money or will have less money, they are less likely to make a big purchase. That is going to slow the market down. Basically just means that there's less transactions, probably less inventory, which can actually be a good thing, right? Keep in mind that we're just here talking about things to consider. Anything that we say doesn't mean that it is a good or bad time to buy because there's advantages of any type of situation. Right, when there's less transactions being made, you have less competition.
Right.
You have less people bidding against a certain property, so you can really make a deal.
That's what I was going to say for recession, because I think recession, there's those certain factors that will, I think, trigger an actual recession. I think if the market is in a downturn for like 3 straight quarters in a row, then the economists will say we are currently in a recession. But just because the entire economy is in a recession doesn't mean your economy is in a recession.
Right.
So if everyone's kind of reacting to the real estate market as if money is going down, but for your business, for your 9 to 5, for how you and your partner are making moves, your money's going up, you're at an advantage. And I think that's kind of where we've been in this last year and a half, while the world has been on a slight downturn. Our business, because of some moves that we've made on our business model and who our customers are, has increased over the last 3 years.
Yeah.
So much so that we were trying to get a business loan and we did end up getting it. But they were like, a red flag is your profit has tripled in the last 2 years. And we're like, well, that's really unheard of. So, we really have to take a double look at that because you went from X amount in 2021 to X amount in 2022, in 2023. And that's just a red flag. And it's like, so success is a red flag for you.
That should be a green flag.
Should be a green flag. But again, the point there is just because it's a recession, you're seeing that trigger word being said all over social media and all over the news. Actually look at your own personal finances and figure out, are you personally in a recession or are you on the up and up and maybe it's a good time for you to make an economic move?
Yep. Another thing that can consider, especially when we're talking politics, is election years, especially because we are in an election year. And so typically with election years, especially with the last couple, like who knows what is going to happen. It can be a very volatile time in terms of politics, in terms of just in general, like overall how everybody's feeling. Like it can be very volatile depending on how things go, depending on who's in office, depending on what types of things are said or promised, or the first couple of actions that are taken from whoever is in office. Sometimes they can be beneficial, sometimes they can't. And so that volatility sometimes has people holding off like that. Let's just wait and see what happens, which again could be a good thing if you are ready to pull the trigger. If you are ready to go and everybody else is like, let's wait, then again, you probably have less competition. Now, historically, home prices do rise at a lower rate during election years. So there was some data put out, there's some data from the California Realtors Association. I do like that. We were able to get it from California specifically, that show like how high the home prices rise by percentage before the election year, during the election year, and after the election year. So home prices typically rise 6% the year before an election year.
Interesting.
4.5% during the election year, and then 5.3% after the election year. The important thing, there's not a huge difference there, but the important thing to note is that it rises at a little bit of a smaller rate during the election year, which means home prices won't increase as much typically during the election year. Because again, I think everybody's expecting a lot of volatility, so they try to keep things like, let's not make too many moves when there's an election year.
What I'm wondering is how much, because it was all increase, which is interesting. I thought there would be at least one time where it would decrease. So I'm wondering how much of the increase is due to inflation, right, which is typically like 3 to 4% already, and how much is due to politics and the economic landscape.
Yeah, I'm sure that's in there. I feel like the assumption is that most, unless again there is a year of like recession or something bad happens in the housing market, home prices are typically on an increase. So if they increase at a lower rate, that is usually like a red flag of like something's happening, you know. So again, these are just things to keep in mind as we're in an election year, something that you may be able to expect based on historical data. So again, some things to just keep in mind. Anything else you want to talk about as it relates to economics or politics?
Not really.
Okay. So the next thing we want to talk about is interest rates, because I think this is what I think most people consider the main driver of when you should buy real estate. And so I want to talk about it and definitely how it affects, but maybe some other things that can also play a role. So just in case somebody's a newbie to real estate and doesn't know exactly, maybe we've probably all heard about the term interest rates, but if you don't know exactly what it means, it's basically how much the bank is going to charge you for borrowing the money. So, right, if
Ain't no free checks out here.
No free checks. Nobody's going to let you borrow money for free. So with a higher interest rate, that means you are paying more for that loan. And that typically also means a higher monthly payment for the same purchase price. And so the typical pattern, one thing to note, is that as interest rates go down, home prices typically go up. Because as we just talked about, if money is cheaper to borrow, more people want to take advantage of that. With more competition, you typically see the price going up and up and up because I'm trying to beat now 5 other people for the same property. So I want to talk about the current interest rate is at about 6.66% as of, I think, January 11th.
Nice. That's a decrease. That's not nice, but it's a decrease from what it was a month ago.
Right. And even in the past year, a lot of people have been holding off because we've gone through, right after COVID, interest rates kind of soared and they were up to like in the 8%. And that was a huge increase for what a lot of folks were seeing during COVID. Again, the historical low from 1971 all the way up until 2024 was in 2021.
Wow. And it was
2.65%.
Sheesh, 2.65, y'all. I really hope you got some type of mortgage. You got to refinance something during that time, because that is basically free. That's as close to free money as you're going to get besides a grant.
Yes. The other thing, though, that I think that people aren't aware of, that's not normal. Like we're talking about that being an anomaly. That is not normal, and I think a lot of folks are entering this game of real estate, or were entering the game of real estate right about that time. And so they think that that is normal. Another data point that I think is important for everybody to know is the historical average for interest rates. So for this same time period, about 1971 up until 2024, the historical average interest rate is 7.74.
Really? Okay. good to know.
Right? It is good to know because
bad.
I think it gives you some more perspective
Right.
on thinking like, yes, interest rates seem high right now, but they're actually lower than they historically are. Right. And so again, think of 2021 as an anomaly and not the norm. If you're waiting for interest rates to go down that, you will never buy because like, a lot of folks would be surprised to see that ever happen again in our lifetime.
Right. And again, you have to think about the economic landscape that led to that. So it's like, do you even want interest rates to go that low again? Because that means that something bad is really happening in the economy and the world to allow for money to be that easily printed.
Yeah.
Another thing that I want to talk about is, what interest rate did you say it is currently?
6.66.
So, this little mark of the beast Bible reference, 6.66. We'll leave that there for anyone. I'm sure the YouTube comments going to go crazy over that, but mark of the beast, where they talk about in the Bible that you're not going to be able to buy anything without having the mark of the beast either on your hand or on your forehead, and you will see the numbers. That's kind of crazy that that's actually where the interest rates are right now. That's just coming up right now. It's very, very interesting. Jaida reads the Bible. I see his head going like that's interesting right there.
It is interesting.
Go ahead, Queen.
Another thing to keep in mind, when with interest rates being one of the main things that I think people are like, oh, I'm going to wait for interest rates. I want to wait for interest rates. It's impossible to predict and know what interest rates are going to do. Now, the Feds have said that they are going to cut rates 3 times this year. Mm-hmm. That's what they say. It's not a guarantee.
And you don't know when.
You don't know when, and it's not a guarantee. If other things are happening, they don't have to stick to their word. That's just a general prediction. But I think that has people, preparing to be able to jump into this market. Another thing to consider, you can refinance when interest rates go lower. What you cannot refinance is your home price. So again, something else to consider. Any market it can be a good market to invest in and to get a home property in. But no, if there is a market where the interest rates are high, if you do see them dip in the future, you do have the opportunity to refinance and get that lower interest rate. But if you are waiting around for a low interest rate and now you're overbidding and possibly over pricing the home, that's not something you can change. The home price that you buy that is it. You can't go to the bank later and say like, hey, can I actually buy this for a little bit lower? Like, it's bought at that point. So one thing to keep in mind, one thing you can change, the other thing you can't. Yeah. Keep that in mind.
And one more to that, 'cause that's a great point. But you can also buy down points or buy down your interest rate on your property as well. It's going to cost some money up front, right? So you may pay an extra $5,000, $10,000 to buy down an interest rate. So instead of starting at 6.6, if you're like, ooh, market the beast, let me avoid that. Pay an extra $10,000 and now you can get it down to 5.6, and that will make your monthly interest rate lower, and then you'll end up paying lower over the 15 to 30 year life of the loan as well. So talk to your mortgage broker or your lender and see, do I have an option to buy down the interest rate at the beginning of the loan?
Yep. So again, kind of to wrap up the interest rates, this is the percentage that you are charged by the bank to borrow the money. Higher interest rate is going to mean a higher monthly payment. You can refinance to a lower interest rate if you qualify, and that typically means that your home value has increased by at least 20%. That's typically what lets the banks know, like, okay, this is a good move. They can go ahead and refinance.
Or you've paid at least 20%.
Or you've paid at least 20% of your loan. And again, that historical average is 7.74. Right now we're sitting at 3. What you saw?
So it's
6 point.
So it might be time. It might be time to jump into the market, y'all.
It might be time, right? But keeping in mind that sentiment, everybody has it right now, right? So keep in mind. This next year, I think a lot of people have been waiting and sitting for interest rates to at least get a little bit more stable, which they're looking like they might be. So be prepared to come with a little bit of a competitive offer, because you're probably going to need that, because there's probably a lot of people out there that are ready to jump into the market.
And I'm not going to tell you where we live, but buy where we live, so that way when you buy something, it'll increase our equity.
That part. Okay, next thing to consider, another thing that I think is overlooked is the season. You'd
like
be surprised.
winter, spring?
Yeah.
Really?
You'd be surprised how much the season affects what the market does.
Talk to me.
And it's pretty much the same every year. Like this doesn't change too much year to year.
I'm guessing summer is crazy.
You're on the right track. You're on there. I was gonna ask you, like, what do you think is the trend?
I feel like I can see summer being a huge trend for people buying because like school's out, the weather's nice. You can go to all types of open homes. Homes are gonna look better, I assume, in the daytime with the sun, so they might sell for higher. So I think summer or holiday season. So winter might be a close second, just because like it's Christmas. You want gifts, you want to be with the family, so you're trying to get into a home right before the holidays.
Okay, the first half of what you said was like right on par, especially with like the weather. And again, think about the market. The market is all about what people think that this house is worth. So if you've got the nice sun shining, you've got the flowers blooming, you've got nice leaves on the trees, right? It's going to look a little bit nicer. And so the perceived value of the home is probably going to be a little bit higher. So I'm going to go season by season and talk about some pros and cons. Let's start with winter because we are in winter. It is colder than a mother. Winter, some of the pros of buying in winter. The sellers are typically more motivated in winter, which is going to mean less competition and possibly more perks, right? With less competition, sellers are trying to, if they're selling in winter, a lot of sellers in winter are selling because they have to. They may need to get out, and so they're going to be motivated. And so you may be able to really negotiate a good deal. You may be able to come under asking. If you're the only offer and they're trying to sell it, they might take whatever you can give them. And they might even be able to throw in some perks if they're really motivated, right? I'll throw in some closing costs. That's one of the really good perk that can get thrown in there. If someone's willing to pay $5,000 to $10,000 of your closing costs, that can save you a lot of money up front.
Sure.
And maybe even some money that you can reinvest and buy down the interest rate.
Yep.
Right? So those are really good pro. The con, of course, is less inventory, because the one thing that doesn't quite line up with what you said is people wanting to buy during the holidays. People typically want to stay right where they are. There's usually not a lot of movement during the holidays.
So I mean, people don't want to sell. That's why there's less inventory. But people do want to buy.
I think it's
both
and hand in hand, right? I think sellers also know that most people don't want to move during the holidays, and so they're not going to put their property up on the market, right? Even as a seller, you don't want your property to be on the market for long, so you want to put it on when you think it's going to go and go quickly, because as soon as it passes like 30 days on the market, your asking price is irrelevant. You're going to get what you get, right? So again, something to keep in mind, and also people who are buying have to be able to move in the winter. So if you've got a market where you're looking in like Chicago or Minnesota or something where it's really cold, possibly even snowing, the logistics of people moving may not be able to happen. Right. So keep that in mind. Wherever you're trying to move to, the weather is going to play a role there if this is a property where somebody's gonna have to move into it, especially you. So again, winter, the pro is less inventory, so sellers are typically more motivated. That was actually the con. The pro is that sellers are more motivated. The con is that there's less inventory.
There it is.
Spring. Spring is when the market is hopping.
Yeah.
Okay, because this is right when like school starts to get out, so there is more inventory, which is going to mean more options. If you're looking on an app, you're going to see a whole bunch of for sale signs. There's going to be a lot available. The con to that, there's also a lot of people looking. This is the time when people want to move because, again, school's about to get out. People are going to be out for the summer potentially. Their kids are going to be out. This is a good time to move. Weather's good in most places, so this is when people are motivated to move. So on both sides of the market, this is typically where we see the most activity, which again is going to mean you have a lot of options, but it also is going to mean you have probably a lot of competition. So again, you might have to come with a competitive offer. You might not be able to come in under asking, because if you have somebody else that's at asking or above, your offer is likely going to get looked over. So some things to consider. Anything you want to add there? Is that what you expected?
Yeah. On par.
Yeah. Summer is very similar. With the caveat that if you were to wait towards the end of summer, like getting into like early fall, that's typically when things start to slow down and when you might be able to find a good deal. because those houses that have been on the market all summer that haven't sold yet, now they've been on the market for 30 plus days. You can cut a good deal now. Like, okay, I see you've been on the market. I know you're asking 500. How about 450 or how about 475 or whatever, you know? And they're probably going to be more likely to go ahead and give into that because they don't want it hanging out until fall and winter. Because again, that's when the market completely slows down. So again, if you are, when I say like a slower market, if you are strapped for cash or if you're looking for a deal, those are probably the markets you're going to want to jump on. You're probably not going to want to jump in when everybody's out there and it's a buying frenzy. So something to keep in mind. And then fall is similar to winter, where there's typically less movement. There's typically less inventory because of the holidays. And people don't want to be moving and, you know, setting up a whole new house and all of this during the holidays. They want to be really stable during the holidays. School is starting. And less people are willing to move. So again, that typically is going to lead to a slower market. But again, this is a climate where if you're ready to buy and you find something you like, you can probably cut a deal because you're probably not going to be bidding against other buyers. So all you have to do is convince the seller to take your offer. You have to just give them something good. There's probably going to be some back and forth, but I think that's it's a different scenario to be in, but sometimes a better scenario to be in if, again, you are looking for a deal or you're not trying to, you have a cap. Like, I really can't go over this. Right. That can be a good climate to go ahead and make a move on.
Yeah. I think another thing to think about, especially in these seasons, is if you know the people who are in the house right now trying to sell it are also looking to move and looking to buy a house, they're most likely going to want to buy and sell around the same time, especially if they have a 1031 exchange where they're using the money from the sale of the current house to purchase the next house. And that's what happened to our first property that we bought is, you know, the folks, this was in July, right? So this is summertime, and they had bought their house and they were trying to sell their condo and they couldn't officially move until they sold it. So we were able to negotiate a little bit, get them to cover some closing costs, get them to, you know, let us keep a little bit of change in our pockets and then allow us to move in. So I think that's something to consider, especially if you know the house that you want is currently either being occupied or being sold by a resident or by a couple, by a family, by an individual. If it's an investor, they might have a little bit more patience, right? Because they're not worried about moving into a new house. They're not worried about using that money to buy something else. They might be a little bit more patient. But if it's a family, a couple, a person, they're like, I need to sell this to buy the next one, then you might have a little bit more leverage.
Yep, that's a great point. Great point. So again, winter, less inventory, less competition. Spring is when it's popping. Summer, similar to spring, but if you get towards the end, now we're looking at, again, less inventory, less competition. And then fall is similar to winter, where there's typically less inventory, less competition. So
what season do you prefer to house shop? For let's say we're trying to get our dream house. Which season would you want to be shopping in?
So we've had the most experience shopping in like summer, fall, like that. We have 2 properties that we've secured in August. And that seems to be our good month, where it's right on the cusp of like at the end of summer, nearing towards fall. And again, where you can kind of strike a little bit of a deal. In August, you know, I think school is like kind of getting in session again. You know, one of the benefits that we had, especially with this property, is that I do work from home and I was able to go and tour any day of the week. That's important. Because if you're in any type of competitive market, if you can only view houses on the weekend, then so can everybody else. And so on the weekend, they're probably going to get 5, 6 offers, and you're going to be just on a list of people, and they're probably going to take the highest offer. Whereas if I see the property on a Wednesday and I can make an offer on a Thursday or a Friday before the even open house, and it's a good offer, they might just take it. They might just take it and say, you know what, like, forget the open house. Like, let's just go ahead and take this offer that we have.
Right. We did the open house down the street, and there was like the house that you love, I was like, location, not sure. There was like 7 people,
Yeah.
like literally at one time, like all the families were right there looking at the house together, talking about, we're gonna make an offer, we're gonna make an offer. And I felt like even if we wanted that house, it would have been a bidding war for sure.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, I forgot what day of the week it was, but we didn't see any other couples see the house that we ended up getting.
Right.
So it worked out for us.
It did. It sure did. Okay. So the fourth and final consideration, and what I believe to be the most important thing to consider.
The most important thing.
The most important thing.
All right, you hyping this one up. We'll go see what it is.
Your own readiness to buy and make a move. That is the most important thing, in my opinion. Because regardless of what the market is doing, if you are not ready, it's irrelevant.
Facts.
So when I say ready, I think one of the more important things is financially ready, right? You don't have to, because there's a lot of down payment assistance programs, but having some type of cash is going to be a really good move. Even if you have like a 0 down payment program, there's typically like a 1% fee or closing costs. Again, there's going to be some type of costs that you're going to need to bring to the table. And even if there isn't, I would recommend moving costs, furniture, things that don't come up on the inspection that you find when you move in. There's always
That's real
something.
Life.
That's
real life right now, I'll be honest with y'all.
Yes.
We moved into the house, beautiful home, right? We moved in during summertime, and we're in a place where the weather is nice. So we didn't even think to check the air conditioning and the heater like under a magnifying glass. Now we're in winter. Come to find out, our heater's 20 years old, furnace is 20 years old, it no longer works, and it's going to be solid $8,000 to $10,000 to replace, right? So those are things that we could have asked more questions about or gotten a more detailed inspection to save us money on the front end instead of paying it on the back end.
And because those are negotiating tactics, right? If they think that there is something that is going to be discovered in an inspection, then if I know I'm going to have to put in $8,000 to $10,000, as soon as I move in or within even the first year of moving in, I might be less likely to pay at the asking price. I'm gonna negotiate. I'm gonna bring you down that $8,000 to $10,000 because I need to save it to pay for whatever is gonna pop up. And so that is why you want to do your due diligence. Really nitpick. Find an independent inspector that's not connected to the seller to inspect the property so that they can really find anything and everything that could potentially go wrong. Right. Some call outs for us that we were aware of is our roof. So that's something that we kept in mind. But yeah, the furnace did not come up, unfortunately. So that's something that we're just dealing with that we both wish we would have known because we would have brought that asking price down for sure. So again, down payment, typically you're gonna, unless you have, again, like a 0 down program, you're gonna at least have 3.5% that you're gonna need to put down, plus closing costs. So I would say closer to like 4.5% is what you should be prepared to have of the purchase price. Again, closing costs, those are typically another 3%, I think.
I don't know.
I think they're about another 3%. It does depend. That's one thing that's very dependent on like what state you're in, a lot of different things. So definitely, again, talk to a lender to estimate that for you. But down payment and closing costs are going to be your biggest things that you're going to need to put down cash for. And then, of course, just your monthly income. Make sure you're not getting in over your head. Make sure whatever monthly income that your monthly mortgage, make sure that whatever your monthly mortgage is going to be, you have enough income to cover that and then some. You should not have all of your monthly income equal your monthly mortgage, because then how are you going to eat? How are you going to get gas, right? Make sure that you can comfortably afford the mortgage.
Something that we also teach to our students is the Forbes 50-30-20 rule when it comes to budgeting, right? And it says that 50% of your monthly income for the household should be going towards your needs, right? So that's your mortgage, your insurance, cell phone bill, internet, because it's 2023. If you don't have internet, it can get rough for you, right? So 50% of your income should be going towards that. If you're at like 80% and you're just covering mortgage, like the Queen said, you still have to eat. You still have to drive places. You still need to have clothes on your body. You still need to get Hulu, Netflix. There's all these other things. Invest, start your business. There's other things in there. So you want to make sure that you're not overextending yourself with that mortgage. The other thing that I want to talk about, Queen, is a huge, I think, part of our decision making in purchasing a house this year, right? Because people are like, oh, the interest rates are crazy. They're high, really high, which in comparison to the interest rate that we got on our first property, yes, they were really high. And in the ideal world, we would have waited. But we're in a season in our life where we're trying to expand family, right? We're trying to have a different type of lifestyle. And we spent 2 years living at grandma's house, sacrificing, saving up our chips, building our business, learning each other. And we got to a point where it's like, all right, Grandy, love you, family, love you, but it's time for us to have our own space again. So we were willing to pay a little bit more in interest rate and a little bit more mortgage up front because of the lifestyle and family moves that we want to be able to make in this season in our life. Now, once we get the 20% equity, once, you know, the market's been great for this house. It's already up us 9%, 9 to 10%. It's already up, and it's been a couple months. So we should be able to refinance into a lower mortgage pretty soon. But if we would have waited and been in grandma's house, waiting for it to drop to 5%, wait for it to drop to 4%, she would have cut off my locks.
Period.
We wouldn't have made it. So that's another thing to consider. In addition to finances, right? Definitely make sure you're in the financial situation, but also just think about what will our life look like when we move and we have our home.
Yeah.
When we own this place, how will our life change? I have one more thing that I want to talk about, but I don't want to step on your toes. So you let me know when I can double dutch back into the conversation.
You got it. I got just a couple more things, but you go ahead.
So another thing that I'm seeing is the trend of being able to rent to buy or lease to buy, right? And there's this option that you can do for cars where you can lease your car for 2-3 years. And at the end of that lease, they'll give you a purchase price, right? That's going to be usually less than if you were to buy it new. They're doing that same thing with homes where you can live in a home, you can live in a condo for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. They'll take all that rent and they'll put it towards the purchase price of that house. I think that we're going to see a increase of that being offered. My worry is that people aren't necessarily going to be doing the math on what's a better economic deal, right? It may seem like, okay, I can rent it for $2,000 for 10 years and then you'll sell it to me for $300,000 after the 10th year. That may sound like a good deal, but I want to make sure that before you step into a lease to buy or step into a rent to buy, actually take the time and do the math, right? $2,000 a month for 12 months, that's $24,000. For 10 years, that's $240,000, and then plus $300,000, so you're at $540. Could you have bought it for $500 flat initially? Could you have bought it for $470 initially instead of paying $540 over time? There's something to think about as that model becomes, I think, more and more popular in the economy.
Yeah. I'm guessing that's a model that's good for people who don't have the upfront cash for the down payment. So, right, there's definitely pros and cons for each one. If you're like, I really want to buy, but like, I just don't have the cash to put down for a down payment, one, going to consider like a 0% down payment assistance program. But this may be another option if again, that down payment is just not possible for you. But if you have the money, then you really need to ask yourself, is that a good option if you already have the money to put down on a property?
Right.
Yeah. Good point. I think another thing to keep in mind is stable employment, right? Once you, even if you put down an offer and it is accepted, you now go into what's called escrow. I like to think of escrow as like a big black hole where you just come in, you go in and you come out and you have keys to a house.
You come in, you sign a tree trunk worth of papers, and then you have a home.
Yes. You may need to provide some documents in there, but that's escrow is just the time where they verify everything that is being said. They get your loan ready. It can take anywhere from like 30 to 90 days in some states. But you need to have stable income during that time frame. So if you are thinking about switching jobs, I would wait until after you do that, or wait until like you really want a stable place. They want to know that this income is something you're going to have for a good long while. So if you're in a time where things are moving and shaking around, if you have to make any big purchases, another time to maybe wait until after you do that. Either wait on the purchases or wait if it's something you need to purchase, like, all right, I need a car to get to work or whatever. Buy the car, I would wait then. Wait until after that to get into the market. But ideally, you want to be making no big purchases during this time frame of when you're trying to buy a car, because that's typically a red flag, and then that may actually kind of mess with your escrow process, and they may be like, just kidding, you no longer can, get this loan. And
I cannot even imagine.
yeah,
You put in the offer,
yeah,
it gets accepted, you're ready, you're picking out furniture, you got your move-in date, and then matter of fact, let me go buy a Tesla too. You buy yourself a Tesla, you driving, you think life is good, and then you get a call from the escrow. Excuse me.
We noticed a hit to your credit, and yeah, don't do that.
Oh.
And we see it often where a house is on the market, it comes off market, right? They say like,
True.
In escrow or like, pending sale. And then like 2 weeks later, it's back on the market. That happened to this property, right? The agent, the seller's agent that was talking to us, when we were about to put in an offer, he was like, come here. He literally brought us in for a little huddle and was like, make sure y'all are serious, because the last buyers, they backed out. They were not financially ready to do it, and I don't want to go through that again.
Yeah. They probably found out that the furnace don't work, bro. Let's get off me. Get off me. They should have sent me a text message.
Help me.
Right.
But yeah, you just want to make sure that just because you're in escrow does not mean you're locked in. You're not locked in until you get those keys, until you actually officially close the property. So again, you want to be in a stable place when you're coming in to buy a property.
Yes, ma'am.
And yeah, I already covered the other thing, which was the no big purchases. Anything else you want to add on that?
No, I think I'm good on that. I'm really just wanting to be very intentional again, because with the rent to lease, with the market jumping all around, you want to make sure you get a good what's it called when you evaluate the property? Appraisal. Thank you. You do want appreciation.
Yes.
But get maybe 2 different appraisals, right? One from the realtor and the seller, and then get your own independent appraiser. Because I think this price is going to be all over the place next year. So you want to make sure you're not coming in too far above market value. So, and then when you get in the house, it doesn't appreciate as fast because you're already $100,000 over what it's actually worth, right? So just be careful with that in the price and bidding war in 2024.
Yes, very important. This is not necessarily if you're going to buy a property, but if you're going to sell a property. This is just a very real thing that people go into, and especially people that we know, this has happened to them. Being a person of color, we know that the housing market is like, it was not necessarily created for us to necessarily thrive in this. And for some folks, they do experience that. If you are, for example, a Black couple trying to sell your home, if you bring out an appraiser, sometimes they can lowball you. So it can also be a good idea to have several opinions. Maybe get a second opinion, especially if you suspect like my home is worth more than what this appraiser just said, get a second opinion. And you can even, like, some people go as far as like, I'm going to have somebody else like at the house so that they don't know that it's my home. Unfortunately, that is just something that some folks.
Yeah, my dad literally dealt with that.
Yes.
So he purchased my grandma's house, had an appraiser come out to do some refinancing, and it was like $50,000-$60,000 below what the apps were saying. He was like, no, this is low. This is ridiculous. Like, what's going on here? And then another appraiser came out. The second appraiser was someone who was of color, and then they gave him the actual market value. But that's something that you don't know unless you've heard it from somebody else, or unless you're on the Redfin app, you're on Zillow, and you see the little estimate on there. Definitely get a second opinion, because unfortunately, people are people, and you never know.
Yeah. And they just think that, they just gonna get what they'll take what they can get. No, get what the value is worth. Get what it's worth.
Oh yeah.
So to really summarize, again, these are 4 things to consider. We've got the economic and political climate, the season, the interest rates, and your own personal readiness, which I think is the most important thing, because as you can tell, any market can be a good market to buy in. There is not a market that is the best to buy in or the worst to buy in. It's really just about when you are ready to buy, when you are financially ready to buy, and when is a good time for you, and knowing how to leverage what type of market it is. I do think it is really good to be an educated buyer or seller to know what type of market you're going into, right? If you know that it's winter and there's a little bit less inventory, then don't come in $20,000 above asking asking price if you don't have to, right? Negotiate that up. Work with a real estate agent that is experienced in these different markets. Ask questions. But just know what type of market you are coming into so that you know how to work the market to get the best deal. Because at the end of the day, again, in any type of market, you can find a solid property and it can be a good deal. Just know how to work it in your favor.
Yep.
So hopefully this was educational for you. Hopefully, you got some things to consider. If you're trying to buy in 2024, I think it's a good time. I'd probably say that any year, but right, I think it's a good time. Interest rates look stable. This can be a really good time for you if you are ready and able to do so. So, I'm excited. If you got more questions that we didn't answer, more things that you got questions for, go ahead and drop them in the comments, and we'll definitely do a follow-up episode on this. But you got anything else?
You know what is always a good time to do, Sinclair?
Like and subscribe.
It's always a good time for y'all to like and subscribe to the Melanated Married Millionaires in the Making YouTube channel. If y'all are listening to this powerful economic podcast in your car, on a run, on the walk, in the grocery store, go ahead and make sure you open up that app, click like on whatever you're listening to, and follow the podcast as well. We want to make sure we're getting this positivity and this wisdom to as many people as possible. And that small little like, that small little subscription somehow helps the algorithm and helps us get to more people. So we appreciate it. It's going to be much easier than buying a house. So if you want to buy a house, go ahead and practice by clicking that like button. But no, this was good stuff. And I think we've been able to tell stories about, some wins, but also some losses that we've done within real estate. And that's what we like to do on this podcast is we live through some things, we experience through some things, and we come here on this platform to share how you can avoid those things, right? How you can save or learn those things, or learn from those things. But how you can save time, you can save money, save stress, gray hair, all that in your journey to building wealth as well. So we appreciate y'all being on this journey with us. Queen, all good?
I'm good.
All good. Well, thank y'all again for tapping in to the Melanated Married Millionaires in the Making show. I'm your host, De'Von Travell, creator of Black Wall Street, the board game.
And I'm Sinclair, a.k.a. the Health Nerd.
Make sure y'all secure the marriage. Make sure y'all secure the love. And of course, make sure y'all secure the bag. Peace.